So I don't usually make videos like this, but if I wasn't willing to put myself out there and show the world who I really am, I wouldn't have become a YouTuber in the first place. I'm not afraid to be vulnerable because I know that you and I aren't really that different. In many ways, you and I are the same. We both have moments where we feel scared, lonely, or depressed. And that's perfectly okay. It's called being human, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. So if you've been feeling the same way that I've been feeling, I hope that this video helps you in some way. For the first half of this video, I'm going to be sharing my personal thoughts and feelings which I experienced during my darkest time. But don't worry, because there's light at the end of this tunnel. Because for the second half of this video, I'm going to be sharing what I learned from this experience in the form of 3 valuable lessons: the tree, the butterfly, and the horse. Now buckle up, because things are about to get deep and personal. I just want to begin by emphasizing that I'm incredibly lucky and fortunate to be who I am and be living the life that I'm living, and I'm very grateful for everything. I'm also generally a very happy and confident person, most of the time. Like anyone else though, I do have days where I don't feel happy or confident. Now usually these feelings don't last more than a day. But earlier this month, I went through a phase where I felt horribly depressed for days on end. And in knowing myself, I knew that there was something more serious going on. So how did I address this issue? Before I go ahead and tell you how I overcame this challenge, I'm going to be sharing some of my thoughts and feelings during this dark time. First of all, I love being alone. I'm very content with solitude, and I genuinely enjoy my own company. But humans are social animals, so like any other person, I still crave deep connection, especially with people who are similar to myself. Throughout my life, I've invested a great deal of time and energy into building and maintaining strong and meaningful relationships. And I've also invested time and energy into myself to become the best version of myself, not just for me, but for everyone around me, so that I have something good to offer to people and to the world around me. But here's the harsh reality. I'm not a priority in anyone else's life. I'm a priority only to myself. During this dark time, I felt very isolated and disconnected from the world around me and the people in it. I felt as though in my social relationships that I'm generally the initiator. I'm the one keeping the friendship fires alive and burning. And this can feel very one-sided, like I'm the one having to reach out, but other people don't reach back. If it were just one person, that would be one thing, but it kind of felt like it was everybody. And I started to wonder, is it just me? Is there something wrong with me, or is this just how the world is now? My channel is nearly 4 years old and still only has less than 100 subscribers, which can sometimes make me feel like a failure. I wholeheartedly want to make a big impact on the world and its people, but I was feeling as though I hadn't made any impact at all, and I was afraid that I never will. I couldn't help but think to myself, if I died today, nothing would matter and no one would care. I'm not a religious person, but in the depths of my sorrow, I made a wish. And although I'm not going to share the whole wish with you in its entirety, a part of that wish is that my favourite creators, Markiplier, Ethan, Jacksepticeye, the Game Grumps, I wish that they were my friends. At least from an outside perspective, they're the type of people that I want to be, and they have the life that I want to live. So it's quite clear and obvious that my main issue at this time was that I was experiencing a great sense of fear and insecurity. But where do these fears and insecurities actually come from? Well, here's what I came to discover. Lesson 1, the tree. Do you remember when you were a child? Chances are you were happy and fearless. The world was your playground. At one stage, we were all once innocent, carefree children. But somewhere along the line, something changed. We started to receive criticism from others, especially for those under the neurodivergent category. That is, if you were autistic or you had ADHD. And this criticism comes in an endless variety of different forms. We were too loud, too weird, too ugly, and the list goes on. We would receive criticism simply for not living up to societal expectations. And in the pursuit of living up to societal expectations, We suppress the parts of ourselves which others taught us to be the worst parts of ourselves. But little did we know, we were actually suppressing the best parts of ourselves. The parts of ourselves which make us so special and unique in the first place. This is a form of childhood trauma. And from this trauma, fears and insecurities grow. And as they do, the inner child shrinks and becomes buried. But that same inner child is still alive within each and every one of us, waiting to be set free. So think of your childhood trauma like a tree, and all the branches are your fears and insecurities. You might think that the best way to deal with this problem is to cut off all the branches or even cut down the tree itself. But that's only a short-term solution, and the tree, along with all of its branches, inevitably grow back. For the long-term solution, the only way is to go deeper below the surface, to tackle the very roots themselves and destroy the very foundation upon which these fears and insecurities grow and originate. It's here at the very roots of trauma where the inner child is trapped. And the key to breaking these roots to set the inner child free is the process of letting go and healing. Along our journeys, we need to ask ourselves the important question: what should we let go of, and what should we continue to hold on to? We need to let go of the person that other people expect us to be, and hold on to the person who we truly are deep inside. And only through complete liberation will we finally be free to heal and grow. Lesson 2, the butterfly. Change is an incredibly powerful and positive thing, but it can also be very painful. In fact, the most dramatic, transformative changes are very often the most painful ones, especially when it comes to the process of letting go and healing. So think of the butterfly, for example. The transformation from caterpillar to butterfly is one of the most beautiful phenomena in nature. We can't help but respect and admire the butterfly for its freedom and beauty. But we forget that such freedom and beauty didn't come easy for the butterfly. We don't realize the true self-destructive nature that applies to this metamorphosis. The caterpillar isolates itself for a certain length of time before eventually emerging as its true form. Within the cocoon, its body is broken down and disintegrated before completely rebuilding itself. Only then can the butterfly emerge and be free. So, like the caterpillar, I too had become isolated during my depressive state. And I could feel myself breaking down and disintegrating to the point where I didn't even recognize myself anymore. During this phase, I didn't know who I was, what I was doing, or where I was going. But I eventually rebuilt myself and took on a new form that is more true to who I really am. And I once again grew to know myself and be free. I've since made a complete recovery and feeling so much better even before the depressive episode even began. This is because I've not only survived, but thrived from an incredibly painful and difficult experience. Against all odds, I've managed to prevail with newfound strength and wisdom. Lesson 3, the horse. So there were two things which helped me get through this difficult time. One was deep introspection and journaling, and the other was reaching out to others. During the latter period, I went out to spend some time with family. One of my family members lives in an area that accommodates for an older demographic, people typically within their 70s and 80s. During dinner, we couldn't help but notice that there was an Uber driver delivering food to an elderly man who lived in a house across from us. But the neighbor was taking a while to answer the door. My family member knew that this particular neighbor, whose name was Jeff, was in his 80s and he had a history of falling down and injuring himself. When Jeff eventually answered the door, it was revealed that he'd had a fall because there was blood running down his face and onto his clothes and even onto the floor. So we went over to the neighbor's house to offer our assistance. While my family member called for an ambulance, myself and the Uber driver stayed with Jeff. The Uber driver helped by applying a rolled up towel to Jeff's forehead in an effort to stop the bleeding. Eventually he had to return to his job, leaving myself and Jeff. While waiting for the ambulance to arrive, I decided to sit down on the couch and have a conversation with Jeff to keep him company and also to keep his mind active. This was an opportunity for me to get to know him as a person and also to hear about the many interesting stories of his life. And boy, did this guy have a lot of interesting stories to tell. Also, might I add that it's a fact that people love to talk about themselves. It's very therapeutic. In fact, people have been known to turn down money in exchange for being able to talk about themselves. So I looked around the room for evidence of Jeff's hobbies and personal interests to act as a conversational icebreaker. And I noticed a great deal of horse memorabilia, so I decided to ask him about it. It turns out that old Jeff used to be a horse jockey in his youth, but there was one horse in particular that he loved the most. Now, for the longest time, this horse would run flat races, but it never won. It just couldn't keep up with the other horses who were comparatively faster. But then one day, everything changed. Jeff stopped competing the horse in flat races and instead made the transition into jump races. As it turned out, the horse found much greater success in the field of jump racing and even went on to become a champion, winning many championships. The fact is that the horse was always a champion. It was just competing in the wrong races. This story inspired me because I couldn't help but compare myself to the horse. Perhaps the reason why I feel like I haven't been succeeding up until this point is because maybe I've been running the wrong kind of race. Perhaps instead of running flats, it's time for me to start jumping. Now, I will still continue to run flats, simply because they're fun and I enjoy them. But at the same time, I'm also going to start jumping. I'm going to take the great leap. So there you have it, guys. Even during the most painful and challenging experiences of our lives, there are always valuable lessons which we can take away, which will provide us with newfound strength and wisdom to help us on our journey. I've personally learned a lot, and I hope that this video helped you in some way. So to summarize everything so far, we all have fears and insecurities which stem from past traumas. But we can heal from these traumas by choosing to let go of societal expectations and instead loving and embracing who we truly are inside. Like the butterfly, we can endure the horrible pain which often accompanies dramatic change, because we know that in doing so, we're destined to become the person that we were born to be. And like the horse, we can choose to take a new direction in life. We have the freedom to choose our own path and live the life that we were born to live. But these things can be achieved only with change, and that change begins with you. Let this mark the start of new beginnings.